Don Marinelli is the Director of Innovation for Inven Global, the English language website for Inven Korea, the leading esports and video game website in Korea with over an 80% market share. Dr. Marinelli is also Associate Director of the Entertainment Technology Management Program at Columbia University in the city of New York and a visiting professor in the School of Arts, Media, and Engineering at Arizona State University in Tempe. Dr. Marinelli retired from Carnegie Mellon University in April 2012, concluding an illustrious 31 years of service to the university in a variety of capacities. Please help me welcome Don Marinelli.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. I don't know, folks. I feel like letting my hair down. I think it's time to let the hair down. Oh, I feel so much better. My talk's going to be a little different than Ken's, although I appreciated it because I'm an Italian from Brooklyn, New York. And as soon as we're done, I'm getting on the phone to my cugini to let them know that copper is where we need to be. There are going to be a lot of homes in Brooklyn needing copper. It's great to be here. My talk is really very much more about journeys. And it's very much about what I've been able to live and experience as a convert to the city of Pittsburgh, where I moved 42 years ago. And I know that up here, hearing all the cool things about Pittsburgh can be somewhat grating. But the fact of the matter is, we've done an incredible turnaround in the city of Pittsburgh. And in fact, we have become very much a model of how a Rust Belt city reinvents itself. And the original invitation for me to come up here was because Lorain County is having an identity crisis. You're basically going through what we went through. And are there things to learn from what we did down in Pittsburgh that can help you both economically, but I think psychologically and spiritually? And so that's what we're going to be talking about. A little bit about my background. I'm a drama professor. Right? The only thing I ever wanted to do in my life was be an actor. And when I realized that the only roles I was going to get were for short, fat Italian characters, I decided to do something that is just like acting, and that's called clinical psychology. So after getting my master's in clinical, my undergraduate degrees down in Florida, because you see, we're native Italians from Brooklyn, but Dad was a member of, let's just call it an Italian club in Brooklyn. And one year he forgot to pay the dues. So I went to bed in Brooklyn and woke up in Miami, Florida. Because Miami was, and still is, an open city. No family owns Miami. So I basically had my teen years in Miami. And in fact, the reason I've got that photo of me in a cemetery is because that's me visiting the grave of Jim Morrison. Because I was at the famous Doors concert at Dinner Key Auditorium in Coconut Grove when Jim Morrison was arrested for lewd behavior. Now I have to tell you something. I was in the front row of that concert and I didn't see anything. All I know is he came out on stage with a little lamb wrapped around his shoulders, and the next thing I knew, the police were scurrying on stage, ushering him off, and I thought, wow, there's a law against having a little lamb on your shoulders. Not noticing the pork loin that was hanging out that caused all these problems in the first place. So I figured since I was there when he really got into trouble, I should at least visit his grave when I was in Paris. 31 years at Carnegie Mellon, 15 of those as associate head of drama. But in the mid-90s, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was caused by us traveling around the country auditioning young people for our drama program. If you're not aware of it, Carnegie Mellon is the oldest school of drama in America. So consequently, we're like one of the most famous. And my job was basically to talk to young people who were aspiring to get into the program. And there was a lull. We had a big backup, one city. I don't even know where it was. But I was getting a very strange vibe from the audience. And I thought, you know what? Let's play a little game. It's Friday night. Money is no object. How many of you, on your own volition, will go see live theater? And maybe 30% of the hands went up. Now, 30% of the hands of young people who were auditioning for the oldest and one of the most famous schools of drama in the country, Disconnect. I said, okay, how many of you would go to cinema? 50, 60% of the hands went up. Then I said, okay, how many of you would prefer to order a couple of supreme pizzas from Domino's, get a case of beer, and sit in your living room playing video games with your friends? And practically every hand went up. So I came back to the School of Drama, and I said, folks, we either have a tremendous opportunity or an incredible threat. Now, the incredible opportunity, hold on. The incredible opportunity is that in the mid-90s, video games were just getting started. I mean, they were about as amateur as you could get. They were 8-bit, 16-bit. They were 2D scrolling games, you name it. And I said, you know this is going to become an incredible industry, and ultimately, it's going to become an art form. And the faculty response was basically, back, back, we don't want any of that here. And I said, you know, the last time there was a technological innovation that was going to fundamentally transform what we do, it was called television. And you wanted nothing to do with that. I said, and the irony of it all is that part of my job is going out and finding money. And yet the only people I can approach with money are those who are involved in television and cinema, because all the theater people are broke. They wanted nothing to do with it. So I did something unbelievable. My wife couldn't believe it. I resigned from the School of Drama, walked across the campus to the School of Computer Science at Carnegie Mellon, because that's where the technology affecting video games was taking place. I knocked on the door of the School of Computer Science and said, is there any room in your sandbox for a drama professor? Now, I have to tell you, I was terrified. I mean, the worst thing, first I thought they were going to give me a math test. Then I looked around me and I saw young people who had not been outside in so long that their skin had become translucent. So imagine my surprise when the dean of the School of Computer Science said, Don, we would be honored to have you here. You bring a background that none of us have. You bring a point of view about storytelling, character development that we need. And in fact, if you were to finally come over to CS, we might finally have good parties. And then I really became audacious, and I said, and can I have a $25,000 raise? And they went, no problem. Sign me up. That ultimately led to the creation of the Entertainment Technology Center, which to this day is hailed as one of the major innovations in higher education. How innovative were we? 50% of our students came from the arts, 50% came from computer science. And we built projects for the real world. It still is a center for innovation. But I realized that when people were saying to us, in fact, my partner was Randy Pausch. How many of you still recall the last lecture, the professor who had pancreatic cancer, who gave it? That was my partner. So for 6 years, we shared a desk together. And the only way we made it work was to profess ignorance. If I've learned anything as a professor, it is to embrace ignorance. Because Randy was one of the most erudite, astute computer scientists that I'd ever met. But he was an alpha male and I'm an alpha male. And when we were brought together in a shotgun wedding, people were taking bets as to which one of us would be found floating face down in the Monongahela first. And I was putting the money on him. The only way we made it work was to acknowledge what we didn't know. And I said, Randy, for the last 2 years, I've been in the School of Computer Science, and I still don't know what you do. I just know it involves zeros and ones. Teach me. And he said, Don, I've got to be honest with you, I don't know what you drama people do, except it involves a lot of hugging and kissing. So if you promise not to hug and kiss me, we'll have a deal here. And it's been phenomenal ever since. But I realized that if anything, we were indicative of the city of Pittsburgh. We were indicative of a zeitgeist that this town had to deal with going through its trauma. So by going through the trauma we went through and then talking about Lorain County, hopefully we're going to walk out of here feeling a lot better. Pittsburgh has always had an inferiority complex. Dating back to what, 1784. This place, I believe, will never be considerable. It's always been an inferiority complex for the burg. Now, I got to Pittsburgh in 1975, which meant that I got to experience the best of old Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, PA, 1975. Now, remember, I moved up there from Miami. Okay, and people were like looking at me going, are you out of your mind? And I would say to them, you haven't lived in my Miami. All right, the traffic, the drugs, the crime. I don't even speak the language anymore. And I came up to this town that seemed to be caught in a time warp. Pittsburgh's population peaked in 1950 at 676,000 people. It was the 12th largest city in the U.S. At that time, it was second in the control of invested capital in the United States. We used to get on Grandview Avenue, look at the city saying only New York has more control over invested capital in the U.S. than the burg does. Not only that, it was one of the few cities with 3 thriving department stores downtown. I remember my mother coming up going, good God, you got Gimbels, you got Kaufmans, you got Horns. This is paradise, because she grew up, what, going from Macy's to Gimbels. I mean, this was like fabulous. Then, in 75 was the 3rd largest corporate headquarters in the U.S. I mean, that was significant, and it was household names. I mean, I'm going to be 64 years old. These were names I grew up with. These were those legacy companies that could never go away. I mean, Westinghouse, it's bankrupt now. Sunbeam, I mean, didn't they make the blenders for the margaritas? Gulf Oil, I mean, U.S. Steel, Rockwell, rocket ships. I mean, this is the Pittsburgh I moved to. And obviously you can relate because you had the steel mills too. We used to look at this as a work of art. Do you realize a hot date was literally driving to Grandview Avenue to look at the glow from the mills? I mean, that was a literal hot date. But we also realized that we were suffering from it. This is what Pittsburgh, by Frank Lloyd Wright. New York is a prison of towers and modern posters for soap and whiskey. Pittsburgh, abandon it. Good God, this is not complimentary, but look at it. We were killing ourselves. We knew it. The city fathers knew it. I mean, this was progress. This was noon in downtown Pittsburgh. You know, we boasted how Pittsburgh made more steel during the Second World War than Germany and Japan combined. But when it was done, we realized we're killing ourselves. And it was the city fathers that said this had to change. But hey, 1979, we were rocking. All right, in fact, we became the city of champions. So think of it. All of those great things I talked about, 79, city of champions, we are like tripping all over you know what. We're having the time of our life when all of a sudden the bottom falls out. Now this is where coming from Brooklyn helped me. Because the Brooklyn of today bears no resemblance to the Brooklyn I was growing up in, which was the backwater to Manhattan. Right? It was going down in the dumps. And all of a sudden, our major industry disappears. And it disappeared overnight. Our population, they fled. Remember we were the third largest corporate headquarters? All of those companies disappeared with the exception of U.S. Steel, whereas the only thing that disappeared were the mills. We were in a major identity crisis. Things were bad. We were losing population galore. We were having an existential crisis. And you know about the strong, that when the world gives you lemons, you grab the... No, that's not the right slide. You make lemonade. So what does make lemonade mean? It means, well, let's go back and see what's left. What do we have here? What's going on? In the midst of this dark cloud, there has to be a silver lining. Well, it wasn't silver, it was blue. We realized that was the sky. All of a sudden, we could see the sky. And in fact, this was such a profound impact on us that when efforts were made to restart one of the mills, the city said, no, we like the sky. And then in the midst of our depression, right, by 82, 83, it's totally in the dumps. What's happening here? A miracle occurs. In 1985, Pittsburgh is named America's most livable city. Folks, there were no people more incredulous at Rand McNally calling us the most livable city than those of us living in Pittsburgh. We were like, huh? Us? We're the most livable city? I mean, Rand McNally was bombarded with people going, obviously your statistics are out the wazoo. This can't possibly be the case. And what they showed us was a picture of the tortoise and the hare. Because in every category, someone else was doing better than Pittsburgh. But we were right in the middle of everything. Oh, are there more museums in New York City? Absolutely. It's also like quadruple the cost of living. And there's a hell of a lot more crime. You know, are there more parks in other cities? Well, yeah, but ours are safe. You can go into them. We started to realize that, well at first we didn't believe it, but then it kept coming. Then it was like, well, wait a minute. You mean we're still the most livable city? It keeps getting better and better? Maybe, in fact, we are good. You mean even a hip place like BuzzFeed says that we're better than San Francisco? I mean, when I was growing up, I used to think that if I led a good life, when I died, I'd go to San Francisco. Now you're telling me I've already died? And I've gone to Pittsburgh? What is going on here? And folks, the accolades just keep coming. Even recently, 2014. Except now, we believe it. Now, we know why. And that's what it's time to share with you. First of all, you have outside recognition that was probably culminated in the G20 summit that occurred in 2009, where President Obama brought the world to Pittsburgh to say, here's an example of American can-do. By that time, we realized we had gone from the Steel City to the city of eds and meds, education and medicine. In fact, if you had told me in 1975 that the Pittsburgh Steeler name would become an anachronism, we would have laughed at you. So how did we do this? We did it through an economic development term called clustering. All right? We realized that we have a lot of individual initiatives, but if we were to bring them together, if we were to synergize them, they become greater than the sum of the parts. So when we talk about clusters, it's a key organizational unit for understanding and improving performance of regional economies. Now, here's an interesting fact. The population of Lorain County is equal to the population of the city of Pittsburgh. Now you'll go, well, wait, Pittsburgh's in Allegheny County. Have you been to Allegheny County? Hills, mountains, rivers, bridges, tunnels. You've got topographical homogeneity here. I can drive to any part of Lorain County. In Pittsburgh, we have a saying, if you can see where you want to go, there's no way you can get there. So topographically, the city of Pittsburgh basically lives unto itself. The other thing is, clusters orient development towards groups of firms away from individual firms. That's why we're called EDS and MEDS. Now, if you get down to Pittsburgh, UPMC hates Allegheny General Hospital. They fight all the time. But when I come here, I talk about the meds. In fact, my wife spent a long time at Walter Reed Army Hospital. She was in the Army, and she was diagnosed with lupus. And this was back in the early 80s. And at Walter Reed Army Hospital, I remember them saying to her, if you're going to get sick in Pittsburgh. And in fact, back in 2001, I was diagnosed with a very rare cancer. And I said to my doctors, I said, look, my family in New York, they either belong to the social club or they're doctors. And I said, as soon as word gets back that little Donnie's got big C, the phone's going to ring. And the phone rang, and it was my cousin Terry, who's at Memorial Sloan Kettering at the time. And she's like, Donnie, you're coming back to New York. You're coming back here. We got the best doctors in the world. And I say, look, if I don't have to schlep to the city for an examination all the time, that's good. Check out my doctor. She goes, I want the names of the doctors. I give her the name of the doctors. She calls back about 3-4 days later. She goes, I met with the doctors here. They said, why does he want to come all the way to New York when he's got the best care possible there in Pittsburgh? Son of a gun. I remember getting a phone. I had parathyroid carcinoma. I remember getting a phone call from a guy. I pick it up. He goes, you don't know me, but I've been waiting for you my entire life. I thought, son of a bitch, death makes phone calls. I said, who are you? And he goes, I am arguably the world's expert on the parathyroid gland. And I want you. And I said, and where are you located? And he goes, about 5 blocks from your house at UPMC. Get over here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Build on unique strengths of regions rather than be like other regions. Very important, because what I'm about to show you is why Pittsburgh has achieved its prominence. And that's by embracing what many people think are our negatives. Wait till you see this. All right, what else about clusters? You go beyond the analysis and you engage in dialogue with the cluster members. In other words, we have a heart-to-heart, face-to-face conversation about what works, what doesn't work, who you're looking for, how we can do this on a human level. And we develop different strategies for different clusters, which very much is about who do we advertise to, how do we advertise it, what do we want to keep secret, what do we want to use reverse psychology on, all of that. And you have to foster an environment that helps new clusters emerge rather than creating a specific cluster from scratch. We're EDS and MEDS, but we were always EDS and MEDS. We're now focusing on it because we don't have the albatross of steel. So let's exploit our strengths and uniqueness. One thing about Pittsburgh that you know is we love sports. That's why beneath this happy exterior, I am sad today. The Pens sucked last night. And the Pirates, that ship is sinking fast. But we love our teams, right? You guys got to get over the Browns. Let's freaking face it, okay? You either got to like embrace it, go, yeah, we're the Chicago Cubs of the old Chicago Cubs of the NFL, or else slit your wrist. The other thing is North Side development. When we built Three Rivers Stadium in the early 70s, it was all about North Side development. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was government. Nothing happened. Guess what? PNC Park was built despite the people saying, we don't want any money spent on stadiums. Then Heinz Field was built, and the land in between was given to a group jointly owned by the ballparks. You now have got Continental Real Estate. You know what we're bitching about now? Where's the parking? Because it's all disappearing. It's being built up beyond belief. In fact, the complaint now is we're running out of room. Who would have thunk that? We're a city of bridges. Pittsburgh has more bridges than any city in the world except Venice. And I used to promote this to my students. I would say, look, when the final exams come around and you learn that you failed even though you've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, look at the choices that you have. Do you want to land in the river? Do you want to land on the railroad tracks? Do you want to disrupt traffic? What? We got choice here. And granted, most of them are falling apart, but think of the adventure when you go over one. Like, will it be me this time? The other thing we realize is we're a city of neighborhoods. And I'll tell you, the big difference between New York neighborhoods and Pittsburgh neighborhoods are that you're welcome in Pittsburgh neighborhoods. In my neighborhood in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, you need a freaking passport. I mean, if there's no red, white, and green on that piece of paper, you don't show up. In Pittsburgh, you're invited. Each one. Polish Hill, you're welcome. Let's have the Polish Festival. You come to Bloomfield, it's Bloomfield's Pittsburgh's Little Italy. You go to Squirrel Hill, second largest Russian Jewish population outside of Brighton Beach, Brooklyn. We've got that and we celebrate it. We will actually go to these different neighborhoods for the festivals. I mean, in New York, I'd go to like San Gennaro, I'd go to Red Hook. But other than that, I wouldn't go to anybody else's neighborhood. They know what I look like. They know where I'm from. I remember being in a store in the Ukraine, in Kiev, Ukraine. The store was packed. This guy muscles his way through the crowd, comes up to me and goes, "Parla Italiano?" It's like, I can't hide. I know what this is. Neighborhoods. This is our map, and these are our neighborhoods. And each one of those neighborhoods has got its neighborhood name on the street signs. They're proud of it. They have block parties. In fact, you want a poster? Here's a poster of the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. And each one is really significantly different. But they get along. Then the other thing was, remember Hill Street Blues? The Hill at that time was one of the most crime-ridden neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. It became Hill Street Blues because Stephen Bochco, who created the series, went to Carnegie Mellon, and he remembered the Hill as a dangerous place. Well, all of a sudden, we had a TV show there, and it was like, well, wait a minute. Let's be proud of that. All right, the show's shot in Chicago, but the Hill is the Hill of Pittsburgh. Then, how about August Wilson? He was only the greatest American living playwright since maybe Eugene O'Neill and Arthur Miller. He wrote the 10-play canon of the saga of African-American life in the United States during the 20th century. 9 of his 10 plays are based in Pittsburgh. There are tours of August Wilson's Pittsburgh. And in fact, you saw the movie Fences that just came out. All right, Denzel Washington wants to do the entire canon, and he's like, we're going to build it in Pittsburgh. The problem was the hill that Wilson grew up in doesn't exist anymore. It's become gentrified. So we had to go to another neighborhood that looked more like the hill in the 1950s. The Pittsburgh, we find what's unique in each neighborhood and we promote it. We love it. And the values are cool. This is all the same city. Why do we have a thriving film industry? Because Pittsburgh can look like any city in the United States. You're looking here, this could be Brooklyn for all, just don't get the hill in it. You got to get rid of the hill. Which also means real estate values, which is about quality of life. One of America's best real estate markets is just one reason to love the Burgh. What's our problem now? The news has gotten out. Neighborhoods that had been very poor, where you could buy homes, are now priced out. I'm trying to lure my daughter back from Chicago, and I'll say, what about Lawrenceville? Too expensive. It was a dump. It's too expensive? I'm like, well, okay, well, what about Oakland? Now it's too expensive. Where do you want to move? Millvale. What the hell's in Millvale? A new brewery. So when I see abandoned properties, what I see is options, opportunity. I see cool things. The other thing is promote what we've got going on here. We promote Pennsylvania Macaroni Company. People will travel to Pittsburgh to go to PenMac to inhale, simply to inhale. Think how blown away I was when I went to the West Side Market in Cleveland. And I was like, I've been living up here 40 some years. I didn't know about the West Side Market. Who the hell's in charge of promotion here? You got an incredible thing. We basically adopted a Brazilian couple in Pittsburgh, and they were like, Don, we love chicken hearts, but we cannot find chicken hearts in Pittsburgh. I'm like, well, that sounds weird. Let's go to Cleveland. We went to the West Side Market with a styrofoam bucket. We came back with hundreds of chicken hearts, which taste like rubber. But we love it all. We promote it. The Burgh Burbs, all of those things. There's a guy in the North Side who turned his house into basically an artistic junkyard. It's called Randy's Place. It has now become one of the go-to places in the country. People are coming into Pittsburgh to see Randy's Place, which is just junk. It looks like my room at home, except it's on the outside. And it's a tourist spot. Now, when I talk about clustering, we've got the Cultural District. All right, the Cultural District is an 8 square block area of downtown Pittsburgh that used to be prostitutes, strip clubs, you name it. The city decided this is our cultural district. And they created a public-private partnership so that the rents, a portion of the rents that are paid there, go to support the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust. And their mission is that they've gotten rid of every strip club. The strip clubs are now art galleries or restaurants. I mean, it's a little boring now, but still, it's the place to go. Then, Pittsburgh is Roboburg. Did we think that up? No. We realized that Carnegie Mellon University has got the largest robotics program in the world. And we were suddenly spinning off robotics companies. So we finally realized, well, wait a minute. If we've got all these robots, let's make use of it. We're Roboburg. It's like I recently was involved with Utica, New York. What are they building up there? Nanotechnology. I'm like, well, promote it, all right? Promote Utica and Herkimer County as for your nanotechnology. Because you sure as hell can't promote it for what you had in the past. You've got to find out what's new. The other thing we realized was kids. The Pittsburgh Children's Museum is considered by many to be the best children's museum in the country. Why? They will try any new technology. They understand the mindset of these young kids. The city has been very giving. They took over the old Buell Planetarium, turned it into Machine Works. It's an absolutely fantastic place. And if you come to Pittsburgh, and you have kids, you've got to come to the Pittsburgh Children's Museum. There's so much to do that is hands-on. And then, what do you do with an old movie studio? I mean, with an old steel mill? You turn it into a movie studio. We have plenty of old steel mills. So we ended up, my buddy Chris Breakwell took one of the mills down in the Strip District of Pittsburgh and turned it into a movie studio. We now make loads of movies there. In fact, Batman was shot there. Netflix loves us. Sony loves us. The only problem with movie studios outside of LA is they are totally dependent on film tax credits coming from the state legislature. You in Ohio just increased yours to $40 million a year. That's still not enough, but it's enough to get Chris and I interested in the possibilities of filmmaking here. In fact, we just lost a movie that went to Cincinnati because of the film tax credit being offered here in Ohio. The only problem is you live by the film tax credit, you die by the film tax credit. That's the problem. Education. We suddenly look around, okay, we're not Boston, but we've got quite a bit of education going on. And obviously education means students coming in, renting apartments, paying tuition, all of those things. And the other thing that I want to promote is it involves our community colleges as well, and places like the Art Institute. So when you take a look to educate and inspire urban youth through the arts, you're taking a look at a man named Bill Strickland. Bill Strickland is a model of community education in the United States. He was doing this before anybody was aware. He was growing up in Manchester, which is a deprived neighborhood of Pittsburgh, and realized that, you know what he loves? He loves ceramics. So he's now going to teach minority youth about ceramics. And he created the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. It has now developed beyond anyone's imagination, to the point where it is essentially franchised, and cities across the country are saying to Bill, how do we start a Craftsmen's Guild here? And Bill never fails to blow us away, because who would have thought Pittsburgh would become orchid capital of the U.S.? Orchids? He's got 3 giant greenhouses in what had been a warehouse district that are growing orchids. If you go to Giant Eagle and see orchids, they come from the north side of Pittsburgh. Who would have thought that? Then the other thing that has come full circle is energy. It's hard to believe that the first commercial oil well in the world was Drake's Well in Oil City, Pennsylvania. When you hear about Quaker State oil, we have oil. And so oil was one of the reasons there was Gulf Oil headquartered in Pittsburgh. Well, all of that sort of disappeared until this shale. I mean, who knew what shale was? I mean, all of a sudden, shale comes along, and it's funny because I went up in Utica. I said to them, you know what this is called? The Utica Shale. It's Utica Shale, and you guys have nothing to do with it. All right? We're hog wild into that, and we created the Energy Innovation Center in an old school in downtown Pittsburgh. And when it was announced, all of these entities said, we want to be part of it. They're filled to the gills. There's no more room in the Energy Innovation Institute because all that room has been taken over. So all of a sudden, the Steel City, the Dirty City, is now a leader in energy and environmental design. We're now priding ourselves on being lead on every building that comes up. Lead, lead, lead. And then our robots again. That's the National Robotics Engineering Consortium. Where? In Lawrenceville, on the site of an old steel mill. And we've even started the Robot Hall of Fame, which is at the Carnegie Science Center. The robots really don't care if they get in, but we do. So the focus is on creating the next generation of civic leaders. There's a group called Leadership Pittsburgh that reaches out to young professionals and even students that says, you know what? We're ultimately going to die off, retire, you name it. It's going to be yours. Let us impart to you what we've learned so you can take Pittsburgh to the next level. For example, who wants an empty storefront? We don't, so give it to some artists. We gave ours away, and it became the robot repair shop. It's not really a robot repair shop, but it's there promoting the fact that look at all the robots that are being done in Pittsburgh. An old storefront became robot repair. You'd have people going down 6th Street in downtown Pittsburgh trying to open the door going, I don't have a robot, but I'd like to see how they fix them. And when that storefront was finally sold, where did we move it? To the airport. So the robot repair shop is now in the airport, where visitors to Pittsburgh come by going, okay, why not? And then let's make fun of our language. You know, the BBC did a sit down in Pittsburgh for like 6 weeks, and they had a big feature on the BBC that said, we have finally found the worst accent in America. It's Pittsburgh. And we thought, well, maybe sticks and stones can break my bones. But you know what? Let's go with it. Pittsburghese. So now we promote Pittsburghese. You can find Pittsburghese on t-shirts. I mean, we just love it. Not only that, you can get a heart attack eating this food. But what the heck, let's promote it. Primanti sandwiches. I mean, Velveeta on everything. These are now things that we promote about the burg. And other idiosyncrasies. Don't even think of parking here. You know, when I first moved to Pittsburgh back in '75, I thought, boy, these people hate chairs. Everybody's throwing out chairs. Then you realize, oh, no. They're not throwing out chairs. This is my parking space. I shoveled it, jagoff, and you better not. Let's even take other things. We have the Fort Pitt Bridge. Left lanes need to exit right, right lanes need to exit left. It's 300 feet. Make it happen. You don't need to go to an amusement park. Just try this. Come up on 376 and you want to go on 51. Good freaking luck. And folks, things aren't all that rosy. The news just came out, our population dropped again. Dropped. Now those of us who are still there are like, why did it drop? And they said, it's real simple. We're dying a lot. The people who remained in Pittsburgh are getting old. They're dying more than we're having birth or having influx. So for all those accolades, we're losing people. Not only that, we're still in financial distress. We're still Act 47, which means the government has to okay our budget because our pension liabilities completely outweigh any income that's coming in. And who are we kidding? No one moves to Pittsburgh for the weather. We've got 80 days of sunlight. If it's a day like this, I don't care what's on your calendar, go out. Cancel. You want to see, that's called the sun, the sun. So let's talk about you. Let's talk about you. And how does anything that I've said about Pittsburgh impact you? And I want you to be sitting there going, okay, if Pittsburgh did what he says, how can Lorain County maybe do the same? Or maybe we're already doing the same, but we're doing a poor job of it. First of all, let's take a look at this. This is the Quality of Life Index for Lorain County, granted from 2012. Now, you're blue. Ohio is red. The U.S. is green. It looks to me like the only two places you suck is in weather and earthquakes. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be happy to be dead last in the earthquake category. Weather, good luck. Like we say, nobody moves to Pittsburgh for the weather. Probably nobody's going to move here for the weather. But there can be sun. There can be. You look at everything else, well, wait a minute. You're actually doing pretty well. Okay, then what's wrong? Well, I don't know. I look at the map and I think, well, you're centrally located. You're on the lake, which we're going to get to in a bit. You're near the islands. I freaking love the islands. Regionally, my God, you've got all this going on for you. I mean, I like Ashtabula. I would go to Ashtabula just for the name. My wife for years called it Ashtabula. And I said, who the hell would live in Ashtabula? Ashtabula. That's more like it. You're doing some things right. You got one of the premier business retention and expansion calling programs in the country. You've got leadership. You seem to care about your town. So let's be honest. This is done. It's over. It's gone. This is for deltiologists, for postcard collectors, okay? Whoever wrote that is insane. You've got quality of life. I mean, my wife and I have driven this entire county just about, and we keep going, what's their problem? What's their problem? Downtown Lorain, that's your problem? If that's the least of your problems, we'll talk. Okay? Let's continue. Color. Introduce color. You know, it's funny, one of the incredible things about the Entertainment Technology Center is I decided it was going to look like Disney World. Because I thought the very notion that you had to win the Super Bowl to go to Disney World was ridiculous. Go to Disney World wherever the hell you want to go. So we turned the ETC into Disney World. I've got robots, I've got interactivity galore, I've got pictures, I've got life-size statues. When you get off the elevator to the 5th floor, you'd stop dead in your tracks because we built the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. Because we're boldly going where no one has gone before. If you go to the 2nd floor, it's superhero floor. Life-size statue of Batman fighting Joker. I've had presidents of countries come in going, I want my picture taken with Batman. I get it. I get it. You've got this incredible lakefront that is ripe, because what have we done in Pittsburgh? We've just rediscovered the rivers, right? We've got 3 rivers. That's a lot of riverfront. In fact, what are the big problems we're having with 31st Street Studios right now? It's on the riverfront. People want to buy it because that's a large tract of property, and they want to put a hotel or they want to put apartments. We want to keep making movies. As Tony said, I had the pleasure of visiting Flavor Seal. I didn't know Flavor Seal was here. I always wondered who put the netting on the Gabagool. I had no idea it was from Lorain County. And I go and I see this incredibly vibrant company, and I'm like, well, yeah, okay. Then I go to Poly One, and I'm like, good God, this is about as 21st century as you're going to get. It's incredible what's going on here. And then, folks, I'm going to ring the bell, bang the drum, because do you have any idea what a gem this place is? All right, you're looking at someone who has made his money, his life, from private universities. Carnegie Mellon, Columbia University, where basically you're going $250,000 into debt. And I'll be the first one to say to you, if you've got kids coming of age for college, go to community college. It is absurd to spend that much money going into debt to have a TA teach your English course. It's BS. And what's going on here is astounding, let alone the facilities itself. But what really blows me away, folks, is the University Partnership Program. This is a model for the rest of the country. The fact that I can come here and choose my major from like a dozen 4-year universities without going into significant debt, which means I can actually afford to buy a house in one of those dilapidated houses and fix it up, because millennials love to do that, and digital natives love to do it even more. That's incredible. When I went into the bookstore here and I saw T-shirts from like a dozen different colleges, I was like, what the hell's going on? And Marcia explained it to me, and I said, this is brilliant. This is flat out genius. You don't really need Oberlin, but it's there. It's there. You might as well use it. It's funny because my wife went to Oberlin for 1 week. When she's like, I had to get out of there. So I said, what the hell, let's go back. So we went to Oberlin before coming here this trip, and I said to her, I think it's the smartest move you ever made. These people are weird. This place is weird. I mean, even the students look weird. Okay. Blight, thy name is opportunity. Let me show you something that should get you depressed and happy at the same time. Value changes in cities. My God, negative 12.8%. Well, that's either bad news or that's great news if you're looking for a fixer-upper. I mean, get the word out. Young people, you want to actually live the American dream, which means your own home? Come here. Come here. What do we have here? Top 10 county foreclosures in Ohio. What's missing? You! You're not on the list. There are some lists you don't want to make. This is one of them. That looks good to me. Home sales in Lorain, it's going up in terms of value, let alone you can buy a house for $75,000. I mean, my brother's house in Brooklyn is appraised at $1.4 million. It's a nice house, don't get me wrong. It's very Italian. A lot of statues and stuff. In fact, it might as well be a Marian shrine. I mean, Mary in the front yard is like 12 feet tall, you know. And I say to him, you know, my house in Pittsburgh, I paid a quarter of what you paid, and my house is bigger than your house. And he goes, so let me get this straight. If I sell my house in Brooklyn, I could buy 4 of your houses in Pittsburgh? I said, yes, but please don't even think of it. Please stay here, stay here. The other thing is your history. Man, you had a tornado. That's freaking cool. Okay? I mean, it was a pisser for those who got killed. But, I mean, tornado in Ohio? You got to make use of that in the same way that come to Johnstown. Come to Johnstown, Pennsylvania. You got to go to the Flood Museum. I mean, it's like a magnet for, you know, car wreck watching. You go there and you're like, wow. In fact, what have they started now? The Johnstown Flood Run. You start where the lake used to be and you run down where the water came. You know, is that sick? Does it bring in money? Cool. But I would say promote the tornado. Now the other thing you got going is you guys are festival happy. You've got tremendous stuff going on the Black River. I mean, when you drive the Ohio Turnpike, if you pick up the book that says Lorain County and you look at it, you'd think this was paradise. There's so many things going on. The one thing I got to tell you, though, is every other county's book says 2017. Your book still says 2016. So whoever's in charge of the book needs a kick in the you-know-what. Get the 17 on the cover. In Pittsburgh, we love festivals. We'll come up. We'll come to these things. Look, do you have an Italian flag? Where's an Italian flag? You don't have an Italian flag up there. Is that it? Okay, good. I'll come. Do you realize what a gem this is? I'm a theater guy. The Palace Theater is a palace. We don't know it exists. For goodness sakes. I mean, my new thing is competitive esports. That's at InVen Global that was on the front, the Korean company we invested in. Already talking with last night over drinks at the Palace Theater, it's like, can we bring a league championship series to the Palace Theater here? Because your stage is so big, we could have 2 teams. They're telling me about the projector. It's like, come on. And then you got to give James Levin like a freaking medal or something. All right? I mean, what he did in his neighborhood in Cleveland with his theater, and now he's coming back to his birthplace. I mean, Firefish, what's Cleveland famous for? The river's on fire. So let's turn that into a festival. All right? It's not the Cuyahoga River, but it's the Black River. This is brilliant. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And then, folks, it's not Lake Erie. It's the North Coast. Do you realize what a gem this is? Look, we still have people that come to Pittsburgh going, oh, I expected it to be dirty and smoky and all that. It's like, well, get out from under the rock, because it's not. Take a look around. There's still people that think Lake Erie is like this polluted place. It's the shallowest of the lake. It's got 50% of all the fish in the Great Lakes. I've got buddies of mine in Pittsburgh who come rent and do charter fishing out of Ashtabula and come back with, we got more fish than we know what to do with. You like walleye? It's like, my God, this is incredible. I mean, I used to boast, my first job was at the Grand Concourse restaurant on the Monongahela River in Pittsburgh. And our big thing was fish stew. And I'd say, folks, I know this is fresh because I scooped all the fish right off the top of the Monongahela River with a net. I know it came right out of there. You made fun of it. But now look, this is gorgeous. This is gorgeous. I'm totally sold on this place. But you got to promote it better. You've got to be pushing this. And it works in the different seasons. Look, nobody ice fishes on the Monongahela River, okay? But this, yes. So it's an asset for 4 seasons. The other thing you've got that we don't have in Allegheny County is agriculture. There's no Allegheny County fair. We're not growing vegetables and all that, but you've got food. You got pasture to plate. Promote that. And the same with eating. Do you realize Pittsburgh last year was named the top foodie city in America? Who knew? I mean, who knew? The same city that gives you Primanti sandwiches, guaranteed heart attack, is now the foodie capital? Why can't you become the foodie capital? Or make the Northeast region foodie capital? So what's the bottom line, folks? The bottom line is the Wizard of Oz. I'm the Wizard of Oz. You have invited me here. This, I think, is my 3rd visit. I come here to talk about all the wonderful things about Oz. You're coming here saying, I need a heart, I need a brain, I need courage. And I'm saying to you, you kind of got it. You don't need to climb Olympus and Everest to do this. You just need to see what's in front of you. You need to put aside whatever political baloney is going on. You need to synergize. I mean, as it is, the county executive and the mayor of Pittsburgh are like-minded. We've got to work for the betterment of the entire place. And that's what I'm here to say. You don't really need to kill the wicked witch. What you need to see is the good that you already have here. And you need to figure out how to synergize it and how to get the message out. Because we're just 2 hours down the road, and most of us don't know this. They're still hung up on the Browns. Get over it. I mean, that has nothing to, the fact that Cleveland and Pittsburgh are seen antagonistically is a fallacy that needs to be done away with. We're in the same boat, folks. And if our boat right now is floating a little higher, join us. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. To you. To you.
Any questions for Don? Yep.
Thanks, John. That was very inspiring. Obviously, The transformation of Pittsburgh took some vision and leadership. Where did that come from?
Okay, Pittsburgh is known for public-private partnerships. And in fact, the government of Pittsburgh, back during the days of David Lawrence, was really pressured by the industrialists who created the Allegheny Conference. Because the industrialists were the ones who were literally being guilted for the poor quality of life that was existing in Pittsburgh, and said, you know what, we're very successful in steel and the other industries, but we're killing our people. And they were the ones that said, we need to change. And so working with David Lawrence, they instituted the first environmental laws to cut down on the pollution and what have you. Now we have a number of NGOs, non-government organizations, that have adopted the rivers, have adopted the neighborhoods, have adopted litter. We have a mayor who's a Yinzer, from Pittsburgh, and who loves the city. And it really was a public-private partnership. The interesting thing, of course, is when I talk about eds and meds, those are not-for-profits, right? Which means they're not paying taxes. And it's an ongoing issue in Pittsburgh because UPMC is growing like mad. But every time it buys a building that had been on the tax rolls, it becomes not-for-profit. So now it's like, well, how do we pressure UPMC to start providing revenue for the city because they're not really doing it. Now they'll sit there going, we're the #1 employer in Pittsburgh, but you got to squeeze a little bit. I mean, you got to squeeze. Okay. The mayor's Italian, so he's squeezing. Okay.
Hi, it's me again.
Fine.
Yeah. Thank you for the great presentation that you gave. And my question is, with Lorain County, and especially like Elyria, Lorain, and so forth, how much of a significance was it for those suburbs of Pittsburgh to join together with Pittsburgh to help with the economic development?
That's a really good question, because I would be lying to you if I said all the suburbs are on board, because there are certain suburbs that like being not on board, like the most high-income ones, Fox Chapel, Sewickley, they like being where they are. But the old mill towns, like Duquesne, Crafton, Clairton, Elizabeth, they realize that they need to hook their wagon to the city and to basically to the metropolitan region. And they've, as Trump said, what have they got to lose? So they might as well work with us. And as a result, you take a place like Elizabeth, Pennsylvania, which is on the Monongahela River, their schools were going down the tubes, so they were the most open to trying new forms of education. They are now considered a national model for how to integrate technology into elementary school, middle school, and high school. And I take some credit for that, because when their superintendent came to visit the Entertainment Technology Center, he was like, son of a gun, what do we have to do to make a place like this? And I said, first of all, you need to go to Home Depot and buy some paint. Put some color on these walls, all right? Make it look inviting. And get the students involved, all right? Look, I have a now 30-year-old daughter who her entire life never had a problem letting me know how uncool I was. All right? You got to get them involved. All right? Elizabeth Forward has put 3D printing machines in elementary school. And what do they, all it takes is one 6th grader who takes the 3D printing machine to make a platform for her classmate who's in a wheelchair, who's got trouble putting his stylus on. You need one story like that, and it just lights the fire. And it's like, son of a gun. Because when Randy and I started the Entertainment Technology Center, it's a graduate program back in '98, and we said, look, the only people that really know technology and the arts well enough to make this work in the sense of games, theme parks, you name it, are grad students. But, the but of Ken, this is going to skew younger and younger and younger, to the point now where I would say an entry-level high school student has the technical chops that a grad student back in '98 needed. And you know what? Unleash them. Give them the tools. And that's one of the things I love about this place. It's about as visionary as you can get, and with their foray into innovation. In fact, I go to the Elizabeth Forward Christmas market, and now you've got middle school kids who have incorporated and are selling products that they've made, so they're learning economics at the same time they're learning manufacturing and learning distribution. I dropped $100 on soap. I mean, I don't need all that much soap, but it was like, you know what, if you've got your company and you're like 12, sure. So that's what's going on. Anyone else? Yes.
Speak a little bit about and you've alluded to this a lot, sort of something that I'm very interested in, is where the arts have played a role in all of this. You're doing work at ASU that's pretty groundbreaking in that, and there's an artist involved in robots in stores, and you brought the theater program to the engineering and computer program. Can you expound on that a little bit and what that value is?
The arts are integral because the arts are now intrinsic. All right, the very notion of disciplines is one of the things that's going to fall away in the 21st century. And in fact, I forget which major school it was that just announced that there are no more disciplines. Everything is now so interrelated. I mean, for example, take your phone. Why is your grandchild the one teaching you to use the phone? All right, it's because they realize the phone is a means to an end. And that end is everything from communication to art. I mean, Instagram, I look at the photos that my daughter takes, that kids take, and I'm like, my God, if I wanted to be a scholar, the composition is incredible. I like the filter you put on here, you enhance this. And it's like, how old are you, 12? Okay. So, the arts are now part and parcel of everything we do. It's like I tell people, you think it's social media. It's not social media, it's storytelling. I'm telling you the story of what I did this morning. I want to hear the story of what you did. I teach a course at Columbia University that I'll start in 2 weeks, and it's called Managing the Entertainment Technology Multiverse. People go, the multiverse, what is he talking about? The multiverse is recognizing the fact that young people today inhabit 4 simultaneous dimensions of existence. They inhabit the corporeal world, the real world, my car, my room, my school, whatever. They inhabit the virtual world. Need I say more about that? They inhabit augmented reality. Gee, where the hell am I going? Let the phone show me where it is. Or, gee, I'm in a new city. Where are all the cool spots? Hold up the phone. Here's cool, here's cool, here's cool. And they inhabit an alternate reality, which is their avatar, which is their game name, which is basically their fantasy. And then I think about it, well, that's what I did when I was growing up. I inhabited a virtual world. The only thing was, it was chemically induced. Okay, and I did it for the same reason. It's like, well, I think reality sucks right now, so I'm going to go someplace else. Now you can be sober and go someplace else. I mean, it's really significant. So if they're inhabiting 4 different planes of existence simultaneously, go for it. You know, in the old days we would say, well, there's the spiritual side of me, well, it's all one now. It's all one. So the arts are absolutely intrinsic to this. I mean, take a look at the science of sport, okay? I mean, pitch speed, pitch count, speed of the ball off the bat, who the hell cared? I mean, now I'm at the ballpark going, did you see that? That ball left his bat at 118.3 miles per hour. I really don't know what that means, but it must be cool. I mean, the science is there. We're now discovering it, and the science is art. You see, I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the Italian Futurists. The Italian Futurists were a movement in Italy in 1909 that was the first art movement to embrace technology as the pinnacle of artistic accomplishment. I like trains. Have you seen a steam engine? Steam engine in motion, in action? That kicks butt. I mean, that is absolute genius. All right? We like to go on cruises. My God, that's a spaceship. I was in the Air Force. I like to fly. I mean, come on. That's artistry. That's art. So it's all around us. But the one thing I will say is there's a tension that develops when the art becomes, it's not commercialized. I have no problem with commercialized, but government controlled. Like, this is our festival, this is our festival. You've got to have a nice tension between homegrown art, grassroots art, and the one that's funded by the government and what have you. I always like that tension. Anything else?
Yeah, so thank you for coming, by the way. I must say you are an excellent performance artist. My mother actually teaches theater and directs theater in Cleveland. So,
Okay, great. That's a compliment. Why do you think I became a teacher?
of course. So my question is actually, I was watching this really neat film, Generation Startup, on Netflix, and it's really what got me interested in the growth that Pittsburgh's going through, and how exciting it is to see generations of entrepreneurs promoting that. And it was really cool because the perspective is people in Pittsburgh had grit and they stayed true to the city to help it grow. I just wanted to see what your thoughts are, that and also on Venture America.
I'm very involved in the venture industry. I love the arts and all that, but we also have an electronic medical record company that we've invested in, and of course, video gaming and what have you. Pittsburgh is a very great place for initial startups. It is not a good place after they run out of that money. All right, and that's one thing that we are fighting a lot of. Because what's happening is the students are coming out of school with an idea. They will go to the Alpha Lab. They'll get maybe 100,000, max 250 to get started. And the expectation is by then they should be ready to have a commercial product, and it almost never happens. So what occurs? We need the next round of funding. And that's where we fall short. What happens? They go to Silicon Valley. We've got, obviously, there's a Carnegie Mellon University, Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley's where there's plenty of money. And when they invest in a company, 9 times out of 10, they want it to relocate to Silicon Valley. So that's one of the things that we're fighting against in Pittsburgh is you can get your company started, but good luck staying here. And if you do stay here, odds are pretty good that once it is acquired, it'll be moved someplace else. And that's a real thorn in our side. Because the fact of the matter is, when it moves to Silicon Valley, your overhead goes through the roof. I mean, it goes insane. If you move to Boston, it goes through the roof. Fortunately, Pittsburgh is now a major research center for the major companies. Google's second largest lab outside of Mountain View, California, is Bakery Square in Pittsburgh. There are over 500 Google employees there, and it's growing. Apple just announced that it was going to expand its research center in Pittsburgh. In fact, Pittsburgh is the only city in the country where every one of the major tech companies has a research lab. Disney has a research lab there that's working primarily on animation algorithms to speed up animated films. Microsoft's got a big lab there. Pittsburgh was the first city where the driverless cars were serving as taxis and all that. Because bluntly, if it could maneuver through Pittsburgh, it could maneuver anywhere. Where was their second test site? Tempe, Arizona. Why? Arizona State University, which for the second year in a row was listed as the most innovative university in the country above Stanford and MIT. CMU wasn't in the top 5. And I was like, if it isn't innovative, I'm not interested. So Uber is a big presence there. Ford Motors just opened a huge lab to compete with Uber. Because when Uber came in, what did they do? They stole 40 computer scientists from the National Robotics Engineering Consortium in the Strip, because they were working for CMU, and Uber came in and said, we'll give you a raise and stock, and you can do whatever the hell you want, as opposed to government contracts. 40 of them picked up and went across the street basically, which actually was fine. It meant we had to hire 40 new roboticists. So that's cool. So that's my answer. Great for early startup, but it's a hassle when you blow through that first round of funding. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, real quick, one more.
Okay, sorry.
I'm loud. Good. We had an earlier conversation in Spanish. We started your program talking about what kids would rather do at home.
Yeah.
I just mentioned it. I just came back from Singapore, the Far East, and Asia. And it looks like it's a bigger business over there than it is in the United States. I said, where are all the building over here? It's a virtual gaming site and things of that nature where the businesses have embraced it. Why are we behind, I guess, a little bit? Our kids doing all that, so that's what I'm talking about.
I'll tell you why we're behind. I've had to do a lot of research into this. First of all, esports in Korea, for example, is the #1 leisure activity. Okay? And esports competitions beats network television in Korea. All right? It beats all the traditional sports. China is now hell-bent on becoming the esports capital. They are literally buying Korean players at $1 million a pop. Okay? The reason it's so popular, though, is a geographic one. If you've been to places like Korea or Singapore or even China, they live in high rises. And if you've got 3 rooms, or Japan, you're freaking lucky. Because I had a campus in Osaka, Japan, and they were like, we can get you an apartment in downtown Osaka for $700 a month. And I was like, huh? So we go to downtown Osaka, we go up the elevator, the door opens, and it's a closet. I mean, it's a closet. I mean, and yet there was a kitchen, there was a bathroom, they were just like in the corridor. And you walked into the room and I said, this isn't an apartment, it's a cell. This is a cell. This is what I expect the aliens to put me in when they come and get me. So they had to have a place to go for fun. They're called PC Bangs, B-A-N-G, PC Bang. Bang is bang in Korea, which means room. So it was a PC room. And that's where they all went for some social activity. And so they all got together and the games became synonymous with social activity. And that's where the friendships formed because, I mean, Korea is like my second home. I call it the Italy of Asia because their neighbors are Japan and China. Well, the Japanese are like the Germans. Who are we kidding? The Chinese are like the French. We like you, we don't like you. We like you today, we like you less tomorrow. So and then Korea is like stuck right in the middle of them. So what are you going to do? Wine, women, and song. Right? They got the best look, the women dressed to the nines, the cars, who's driving a Kia and a Hyundai, and the food is really good. Some of it's even cooked. So it's very, very popular and social, and you can be a geek and be famous. All right, I mean, you take a look at these gamers, there's no muscle there except outside of their wrist. The muscle's in here. So that's why. The US, we sit at home, we play console games because you have to realize esports are not console games. It's not, they don't play it, it's not on your PlayStation, it's not on your Xbox One, they're on PCs. So we're more addicted to the consoles here. All right, that's enough. Tony's getting agita over here.
Well, I just want to make sure before we leave, we do have a round of applause for Don one more time.
Thank you. Thank you.